Good afternoon, good morning. Hello, everyone. If we do not know each other, my name is Edward Marczyk, and I'm Executive Director of the European Fundraising Association. And I very gladly and warm-heartedly welcome you to this launch webinar of the updated Advanced Competence Framework. It's good to see so many of you here, our members, training providers, and I hope we will have a fruitful discussion because at the European Fundraising Association, we are all about developing professional fundraising across Europe, and competence frameworks, either standard or advanced ones, are the right tools to help our members and training providers develop educational programs. And they have not been, they were not needed more than, they are now needed more than before, because in this ever-changing world, we can see the environment is changing and the need for fundraising leadership is bigger probably than ever. With this, I would like to say big thanks to everyone who contributed to this advanced competence framework, especially our chair of the certification committee, current chair Pia Tonikowski, but also previous chair Paul Darby from Germany, and all the experts who contributed, Jan McQuillan, Victoria McQuaid, and Dennis Daves, and everyone who participated. I wish us a fruitful discussion today. Unfortunately, Victoria has not joined us as planned today, and we don't know why, but we will try to cover her presentation as well. With this, I would give floor to Jan. Thank you.
Hi everyone. So I'm trust that you can A, see my screen, and B, hear me, and somebody could, if you can't hear me, you can't tell me you can't, can you? So I can't hear you. So this is the launch of the revised framework, as you know, which is why you're here. My name is Ian McQuillan. I'm the director of the fundraising think tank Regari. I'm also a member of the certification committee, and I've been on the committee for 6 years. So I'm in the final of my 3-year terms now, due to come to an end this year. And these are my contact details, should you wish to get in touch with me. So what I want you to do as we go through this, I want you just to cast your minds back to 2019. And think what was happening in the world then. Well, this guy was in power in the US, and then he wasn't, and now he's back again. And God knows if he'll ever go. This guy was the Prime Minister in the United Kingdom. He's gone. I can't see a way back from him, but you know, worse things have happened. Stranger things rather have happened. China launched a mission to the far side of, went to the moon. Don't know when they're going back, but the Americans are going to be back there soon. There was the final episode of the trilogy of trilogies of Star Wars. We won't be seeing another one of those, but the expanded Star Wars universe keeps expanding on television and won't bloody stop. And if you are English and like cricket, Kerry is Welsh and doesn't like cricket, so this won't appeal to him. But in 2019, England had one of their greatest ever victories over our old enemy, Australia. So that's a few things that happened in 2019. Also in 2019, complete tangential shift here, we had the first sight of the advanced framework, which was presented at a EFA symposium in Amsterdam. And I was going to go to that, and then I got to Gatwick Airport, and there was a strike at Schiphol Airport, and I got off the plane and came home again. So I never made it. But this was done at the time by Adrian Sargent, and Adrian had been commissioned to revise the standard framework. And as he was doing it, he said, well, we need, as well as something for the certificate, we need something more advanced, something for leaders and managers. So just as part of, you know, almost pro bono, just as a bonus, he wrote the advanced framework in 2019. Which was then adopted in 2022. So in the next couple of slides, as you're all intimately familiar with what's in the advanced framework, I'm just going to whiz through the next few slides to remind you of the format of it. So it was leadership and management competencies. It was set into 4 different chapters for strategic planning and control, managing a fundraising organization, developing a philanthropic society. And then there was this modular choice thing in the end where students could focus either on capital campaigns or major donors or legacy programs. And within each of those, they were CF competency frameworks. They were set out under subheadings. So under CF6, we had a strategic fundraising planning and resource planning and control. Then for CF7 in managing a fundraising organization, remember the name of this CF7 at the moment was managing a fundraising organization, fundraising teams, integrated comms, developing a philanthropic culture and fundraising innovation. And then in CF8, it was all about how to develop a philanthropic society, promoting transparency and trust, but then broadening participation and giving. And then it was all about how do you transform philanthropy in society at large. So, and then within those things, we had the way it's set out is that we set out what the underpinning knowledge for each of the things, each of those categories that fundraising managers and leaders are required to know. So as you can see here, it's about SMART objectives, process setting. This is the one that comes under fundraising planning as an example. And under trust and transparency, here's another example of the things that you would need to know as a leader or a manager and what the competency framework contains. So that's how it's set out. So the thing is, if we officially adopted it in 2022, in 2023, less than a year later, we decided that it needed to be reviewed. And the question is, why? And the answer to that is because a lot changed in fundraising and philanthropy in the intervening few years. So one of the things that became apparent in that time was that there was a lot of inappropriate behavior by donors towards fundraisers. There was a lot of dominance by donors. We were hearing about how fundraisers, especially female fundraisers in particular, were subject to sexual harassment doing their job. So there was the issue there around fundraiser safety, about inappropriate behavior by donors, which suddenly before, when the advanced framework was written, this wasn't an issue, and suddenly it burst onto the scene, mirroring developments in society as a whole. We've also had more development, more thinking around fundraising ethics. So for one example, we've seen how there's still a lot of unethical practice in fundraising, and a former Rotary chair, Heather Hill, wrote that how non-profits were deliberately covering up their engagements with Jeffrey Epstein and deliberately keeping quiet on them. She said that that's their crisis of ethics in non-profits in the States particularly. That was, of course. But Regari has done a lot of work as well in actually taking forward the field of fundraising ethics, which is reflected in both the standard and advanced frameworks, but there's been a lot more work since that could go into that. We've also, in world at large, seen the way that critical theory has been directed at those with power, has shone a critical light on those with power and privilege in all walks of life, and challenging whether that should be the case. And we've seen that in fundraising as well, particularly through the movement in America called community-centric fundraising, which is about questioning and challenging the power and privilege of donors and philanthropists and finding different ways to engage with them. And artificial intelligence, of course, is the big change that's going to affect fundraising and philanthropy from here until the machines take over and we've no need for philanthropy and fundraising anymore. So what that meant was, with all of these things and more combined, so one of the other things as well that I didn't put in there is like fundraiser stress and burnout and psychological well-being is something that over the past couple of years has come to the fore as well. These are all issues that fundraising leaders are going to need to contend with. So that's why we decided to review. Yes, but you're all thinking, all of those things that I just mentioned were things that were happening in the English-speaking world. What relevance do they have to the rest of Europe? I think quite a lot. So just to take the decolonization issue, for example, the UK and the US are not the only countries with imperial past and big immigrant populations. And this is where those issues have taken hold. But I'm not meaning to pick on Italy particularly here, but Italy has those same situations, those issues that have been faced in the UK. And if they aren't apparent in fundraising and philanthropy at the moment, there's a good chance they will be at some point in the future. So the reason we've put these ideas into the framework, including the things like decolonization and matters like that, is the right thing to do to make sure we're taking account of those things, to make sure we're taking account of fundraiser safety and well-being, and whether there's inappropriate behavior by donors. It's a leader's responsibility to know these things. It future-proofs the framework. So it allows countries where these things are live issues to teach them, but because you only have to cover 70% of the framework, if it's not relevant to you, you don't need to include them. But whenever it does become relevant, it's already there in the framework, and it obviates any criticism that we should have considered these ideas. So if we don't put them in there, we could have been criticized that we weren't thinking about fundraiser safety, but it's in there and we're protected from any criticism. So this brings us to the new framework. This is it, launched today, second edition. So the main changes are that we've had more clearer definitions and demarcations of the word leader and manager. So in the old framework, they were tended to be used interchangeably. It just said leader and manager, manager and leader, and without really defining what the two roles are. So we've done that. We've got a much stronger focus on fundraising ethics. And this is how they're set out. So we've now got 3 instead of 4 chapters. The first is strategic fundraising planning and control. That's changed a bit, but not much. And we've got leading, but not managing in a fundraising organization. So the last one was managing a fundraising organization. This is leading in a fundraising organization, because the people we want to bring on are the next generation of fundraising leaders. But leadership, especially non-hierarchical agile working systems, doesn't actually have to be the person who's in charge and leads the organization. There's other ways to lead in an organization. So it's not around job title, it's about approach and aspiration and skill set. And then the last one is where the biggest change has been. We've got fundraising and philanthropy in context, trends, and stakeholder engagement. And CF9 has been incorporated into CF6. And then the other main change then is that we've included guidance about the level that this should be taught at within the European Qualifications Framework. And Vicky was going to speak about this, and she's not here. So I'm going to fumble my way through her presentation after this, I think is the plan. So the difference between manager and leader. So these are the definitions we've adopted. So management is the function that enables a nonprofit to achieve its fundraising goals effectively and efficiently through planning and organization. That's the job of the manager. But leadership is about creating and improving the environment and context in which fundraising management can thrive. So one is about making sure the organization works. The other does its job. The other one is making sure it is able and in a position to be able to work. So leaders will no doubt almost certainly need to have all the competencies and knowledge of a manager, but it may not be that managers need to have the same competencies and skills as a leader. So because these are the, in addition to knowing those things that the managers need, leaders need to know about diversity issues. They need to know about fundraiser well-being, building an organizational culture. They need to know about new and emerging trends, and they must have an advanced, not a simplistic or fundamental understanding of fundraising ethics. They're going to be the go-to people to decide what to do, what ought to be done in difficult ethical dilemmas. So here we go through the modules. CF6 is largely the same, but we've put CF9 here. And because CF6 is largely about practice and the doing of things, it seems sense that if we weren't going to, and we were thinking of doing a different version of CF9, which we didn't do, but I'll mention later, it makes some sense to move all of that into here. And also, some providers do teach this stuff as part of the certificate, so this provides a refresher for them. And there we see that is the same as it was before. CF6 is pretty much the same, and CF9 now becomes the new CF6.4. That's the change there. So with leading in a fundraising organization, CF1 is leading but not managing a fundraising team. And this is the new bit, ethical and regulatory issues for fundraising and leaders. A lot of this was CF8 before. It's been moved here as a new subsection with a lot, it's completely beefed up with a lot of stuff in here. Then we have driving fundraising innovation. The last 3 modules are the same, but have been shifted around because we felt, then communications, then developing a culture, this way provided a better narrative. Now, although these are the same headings, there's new content, there's new skills, there's new knowledge, underpinning knowledge that's been put in there. So although these headings are the same, they are, and have kept most of what was in there before, we've added substantially to what the underpinning knowledge is. And this is the ethics and regulation model. To take you through, there's regulation and self-regulation and corporate responsibility under the regulation section. And then these are all the areas where we've got specific guidance on fundraising ethics about what are the ethical dilemmas, the normative lenses that you need, decision-making, ethics of acceptance or refusal, images and stories, AI, and also fundraiser remuneration, the ethics of how you actually pay appropriate wages to the people in your teams. And then CF8 is where most of the changes happened. So we've got 3 sections in here. The first is context for fundraising and the fundraising profession. This is new. Then it's developments in fundraising and philanthropy. And the third one is stakeholder engagement. Each of those are new. So let's go through those in turn. In CF 8.1, we have these sections. So CF 8.1, the context for fundraising and the fundraising profession, is so leaders actually have a holistic understanding of the context in which they are fundraising. So it's things about knowing about fundraising history. It's knowing whether government policy is influencing the work you do. It's what relationship do you have with the state, and having different approaches and lenses of philanthropy. So this is about your holistic understanding of being able to take care of all of your stakeholders, including the people that work under your control and command. In CF 8.2, we're talking about developments in fundraising and philanthropy. So we've got trends and issues, new and emerging forms of giving, new and emerging forms of fundraising, and then lessons from other countries. And this is deliberately designed so that when new things come on the scene and start appearing, they can be slotted straight into this. So it's a way to future-proof the framework so it doesn't immediately become out of date as soon as some new technique, some new way of giving, some new trend emerges and it's not been specifically named. This section is deliberately designed to capture things that we don't know about yet that will emerge in the future and can be slotted into providers' training. And then CF 8.3 is about stakeholder engagement, because fundraising has many, many stakeholders, and the old framework, especially the CF8 part, was really, really strongly focused mainly on donors and our responsibilities to donors, but there are many other stakeholders, especially our beneficiaries. So this is all, and we brought as well some stakeholder engagement theory to this. So it's about some theory that leaders need to understand. There's donor-centered approaches to fundraising. There's the community-oriented approaches, so a different lens to that. That's that decolonization, community-centric fundraising thing. But if it's not relevant to your country, you don't need to teach this. Critiques and defenses of philanthropy, because fundraising and philanthropy are often coming under attack, and so leaders need to know how to defend against that, including going back to the CF, whichever 4 or 3 was about integrated communications. This feeds into that. Disintermediation is a massive issue that is not on most people's radar yet, but this is how charities are being cut out of asking, giving, and service delivery. And this is going to be a really big issue. So this is something that we've put into there, again, to be ready for changes in the future. And I believe CIOF is already thinking about maybe including this into the revised diploma, AI and stakeholder engagement, new emerging forms. So a note about AI. We've got no specific competence section on AI. So there isn't CF X.X, all the things you need to know about AI, because what we've done instead is incorporate it into relevant parts of the framework, especially under the ethics part. And the reason for that is that it moves so quickly, the developments in AI, that as soon, if we'd put stuff into the framework, it would probably be out of date now as we're launching it. So again, this is a way to future-proof that. We've specified some of the things in having, like under the ethics, like make sure there's human oversight, which are things that are not going to change. But also, in a sense, that AI is just something that you use within fundraising. So again, we wanted to make sure that people didn't think of this as something separate, but was an integral part of fundraising. And this is the way we embedded it within that. And then also with matters pertaining to diversity, equity, and inclusion, this again is embedded throughout the framework. And although I didn't mention those things by name, I think you could probably tell by decolonization, by fundraiser safety, by talking about things like inappropriate behavior from donors as well. All of these things are embedded within there. And at various points, we remind tutors and providers to be thinking about leaders need to be equipped with this knowledge. And we acknowledge Silvia Fontana, who from Head of Labour Relations and HR at MSF Italy, because she gave us oversight, checked our recommendations. So we're very grateful for that. So manager or leader focus, as you know, 70% of the coverage of the AF has to be covered in your courses to get accreditation. And there's a lot in here. So if you took 70% of this, you'd be teaching a lot of stuff. So what we think is if you're focused more at manager and rather than leader level. And within the framework, we set out which competencies we think apply most to manager and which to leader, and we specify that. So we say fundraising, when we say fundraising managers should know, we mean managers. When we say fundraising leaders should, we do. And when it says manager and leader, we need both. So if you're focusing on managers, you'll probably want to get your 70% mainly from CF 6 and 7. And then you'll probably be teaching at level 5 or 6 on the European Qualifications Framework, which is what Vicky was going to be speaking about. If, however, you want to target this at more of a leadership level, then you're probably drawing the teaching from the framework of CF 7 and 8. And then you're probably thinking you're teaching that at level 6. So level 5 is like a diploma, higher national diploma thing. Level 6 is first or second year of a first degree type level. Our recommendation, we would prefer that organizations are teaching this at level 6, but we didn't want to be specific of that, prescriptive about that, because the reason is we want more managers and leaders to be brought onto the section and equipped with the knowledge they needed. And if we pitch this at too high and made it just about leaders teaching at level 6, we risk there was the risk that some countries that were smaller, that didn't have the resources, just would walk away from this and not do it. So we wanted to make this flexible so people could teach at a lower level targeting managers or at a higher level targeting leaders, or mix it up as they thought it was appropriate. I'll tell you one thing that we didn't do. The original plan was to have a CF9, but it was going to be an add-on to the CF. So we were going to call this, there was going to be the Advanced Framework, and then there was going to be Advanced Framework Plus. And the Advanced Framework Plus was going to be like an elective module where students could do something on emerging issues in fundraising. They could do a project that the learning of the institution had got them to work on together, or they could do private study like it was a thesis or something like that. So the idea was that we might have had this AF Plus for countries that wanted maybe to teach at perhaps even level 7, which is master's degree level, something at a high end. We ran out of time, and if we did that, it was going to really slow us down. It's something we may come back to in the future. It's an aspiration, but at the moment we wanted to do it, but we ran out of time to do that. And the review period, obviously this does have to be reviewed. We haven't decided yet, but probably every 3 years, which means the next review for this will be around 2029 or coming into effect maybe 2030. So thank you. That is my presentation, and I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Jan. And I believe Vicky has joined us in the meantime. So Victoria, if you can hear us.
Excellent.
And if you can share your screen, then we would invite you to present. And then we will have space to take questions after these two presentations. Over to you, Vicky.
Thank you very much. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Can see the presentation? Okay, brilliant. Right, let me just move you all out the way. So, good morning, everybody, and sorry for my late approach. I was on UK time, but I'm here now, and Ian managed to keep you all amused, so thank you for that. So to start, I'm Vicky McQuaid. I work for the Chartered Institute of Fundraising, and I currently sit on the EFA Certification Committee with Ian. And today I'm going to explore a practical approach to developing learning outcomes that align with the European Qualifications Framework, or EQF. Hopefully you'll come away with this session with a toolkit to ensure that any courses that you submit for EFA accreditation will have clear and measurable learning outcomes. Okay, so the purpose of the guide that you can see in front of you is mainly to support our members applying for accreditation. It's to provide clear guidance on how to draft, review, and document learning outcomes in a consistent, auditable, and learner-centered way aligned with the European Qualifications Framework, or EQF. We know that many organisations struggle with consistency with writing learning outcomes, and that's where this guide comes in. Its purpose is to provide a shared, clear, and a practical approach that's easy to apply. So it can be used whilst developing a qualification, and in this case, for either the standard or advanced framework. Ultimately, it supports credible certification processes and strengthens professional standing of fundraising qualifications across Europe. So think of it as a common language across countries and organisations. So let's start with how learning outcomes are defined. Learning outcomes are concise, measurable statements that define what learners should know, understand, and be able to do at the end of a qualification. And that's whether it's a session, individual session, a module, or the whole qualification. And learning outcomes define what learners know, what they can do, and the level of responsibility and autonomy they demonstrate. They also form the backbone of inclusive intentional curriculum design, firstly by structuring content and sequencing. So outcomes guide the logical progression of learning activities. Secondly, by aligning teaching and assessment. So they ensure instructional methods and evaluation tools support the intended learning. Thirdly, by embedding accessibility and differentiation. So this means that outcomes enable inclusive design and flexible learning pathways. And lastly, by promoting transparency and accountability. So they clarify expectations for learners, educators, and accrediting bodies. So if you create a strong learning outcome, then every session, module, activity, and assessment will tie back to that one goal, which is really important. And it means that everybody then knows what success looks like. So why is this important? So let's think about fundraising first. So firstly, fundraising is becoming increasingly professional, and that means more scrutiny from donors, regulators, and the public. Clear learning outcomes show that qualifications generally prepare fundraisers for real-world challenges. They also allow comparability across countries, which is crucial as the sector becomes more international. So we know now, for example, that a fundraiser in Spain can trust that an EFA certified course in the UK will cover the same core competencies as the courses in Spain, and that builds trust across borders. It's also important as the world we live in is constantly evolving. People's preferences, behaviours and needs, as well as technology, legislation and more, are ever changing, and our approach to education must keep up. So today's employers want graduates who can apply knowledge, not just recall it. Learners want education that leads directly to meaningful work or career opportunities. We've seen a real expansion of work integrated learning models, things like apprenticeships and internships. And they're growing because they demonstrate competence in real world settings. The ideal scenario here would be that a fundraising learner finishes their course, they get a job in fundraising, and they're immediately able to transfer those skills across. And that's the power of well-written outcomes. So let's get practical. The guide outlines a 9-step process to ensure that learning outcomes underpin every course submitted for accreditation. And there is a very brief summary on the slide in front of you. So step 1, choose your EQF level, European Qualifications Frameworks level, which I'll come on to in a bit more detail in a minute. Step 2, using precise action-orientated verbs. 3, match verbs to the EQF level. And as Ian says, the advanced framework is up towards the end of the EQF, so we would be choosing verbs from that sort of end. Step 4, make sure that outcomes are learner-centred. 5, keep them concise. 6, make sure they're measurable. 7, promote progression and coherence. 8, reference quality standards and ensure stakeholders have reviewed as well. Finally, test them in practice and adjust as necessary. And remember, this is a quality framework, not a tick box exercise. So I gave you a very brief overview there of the 9 steps, and I'm going to go into a little more detail in some of those areas. So what is the European Qualifications Framework? It's a shared European reference point, making qualifications easier to compare and trust. You can see on the screen in front of you, there are 8 levels, and each one is defined through 3 dimensions. So firstly, we've got knowledge, which talks about theoretical or factual, got skills, cognitive or practical, and competence, responsibility and autonomy. So by using this framework, we're ensuring that a level 6 fundraising qualification, as in referred to, means the same across Europe. So learners and employers immediately understand the depth of knowledge and responsibility involved, and this enhances transparency and comparability. So designing high quality learning outcomes, how do we do that? So good learning outcomes are action orientated and measurable, and they're expressed by using action verbs, normally based on the updated Bloom's taxonomy. And you'll see what Bloom's taxonomy looks like in the graphic on the slide. Bloom's taxonomy in general is a model used to classify learning objectives by levels of complexity and thinking skills. It helps teachers design lessons and assessments and helps learners understand how deeply they're engaging with the topic. So there are 6 levels, starting at basic and going up to complex. So starting at the bottom end, you would start with really basic, recalling facts and basic concepts, and verbs you sort of would use would be basic listening, defining, memorizing. And then we move right up to creating at the other end, which would cover producing new original work, and sort of verbs we would use for that would be designing, inventing, composing. So there's a whole range that can be used there and relative to the EQF. And in short, it moves from simple recall of knowledge to higher order thinking and creativity. Now, the advanced frameworks would be based towards the upper end of that scale, and I'll show you in the next slide. So you'll see on this slide a table showing verbs for EQF levels 6 and 7, and you can see how the complexity increases. So we've got analysing and applying at EQF level 6, to theorising, conceptualising and leading at EQF level 7. So choosing the right verb is key, as this ensures that outcomes match the intended level of learning. You could think of it like a roadmap, really. Analyse is a clear, measurable step, where something like understand leaves everybody guessing. High quality learning outcomes should also be limited in number. So we say around 3 to 6 and kept concise. They should be logically structured and focused on one main achievement. What does good look like? Learner outcomes should be learner-centred, and this is a change really in education. So there should be phrased that learners, by the end of this module or qualificational session, you will be able to do. And that makes it really clear for both learners and educators what the outcome will look like. In terms of good learning outcomes, progression and coherence are really important as well. We need to keep learning consistent across all levels. So if you are putting together a piece of learning, you've got to think of what would come before it, what would come after it, and does it sit at the right level? And we need to support clear learning pathways as well. So learners should feel like they're climbing a staircase, not jumping between steps. Referencing quality standards is really important as well. So align with recognised frameworks. They could be institutional frameworks or they could be something like the institutional guidelines or the European standards and guidelines for quality assurance. This is quite important, and I always think of it as checking that your course meets professional benchmarks. Before finalising any submission to EFA, we encourage you to use this checklist, which is available in the document as well. It ensures that outcomes are measurable, aligned with the EQF, realistic for the level, and centred on what learners will be able to do. It also prompts you to consider assessment methods, stakeholder review, and continuous improvement. These steps help ensure that qualifications remain relevant, rigorous, and aligned with professional expectations. So think of this like a final quality control. Everything is clear, practical, and fit for purpose. Finally, we look forward to receiving your submissions. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Vicky. Are there any questions, comments? Please raise your hand and voice it out. I don't see anyone. I don't hear anyone. So then I would suggest we continue with Pia's presentation and an invitation to EFA Learning Symposium. Pia.
Thank you, Edward, and especially huge thanks to Ian and Vicky. It has been a pleasure to work with you past months when I jumped in the middle of this project review into Advanced Framework, and the previous committee, certification committee, already have done so much, and especially Ian. So Vicky and I, we were both those who were coming into the project in the middle of that. But this was really, for me, exercise and also an inspiration to look EFA's work connected to professional fundraising and working with fundraising educators all around Europe and learning what is different into different ways to deliver fundraising education in different our member countries and member organizations. And I'm glad that we have this decision to give alternative levels to educate advanced fundraising education or managers or leaders. And this was a very good solution to use into already existing frameworks, what we have in Europe. And on my behalf or experience in Finland is that we are now following the European framework, the Finnish national framework, and EFA framework. So our education should be very, very followed and qualified in that sense. And this was a really learning and sharing process. And I think that now when we are inviting you to EFA Learning Symposium to Berlin, it will be a continuity to this discussion what we already had when we created and reviewed the Advanced Framework, but we can do so much together, how we can look and share our experience and giving insights, what is happening in fundraising, but especially what is happening also with the education and adult learning. So 1st of June, we are inviting you to come to Berlin to EFA's first learning symposium. And this is how we have described our mission, that this is the future of fundraising leadership, and it will start in Berlin. We are hosting this event together with our German association, our member German Fundraising Association, and they have kindly organized the event so that we who are attending the symposium are able to join already on Sunday evening to Congress dinner. Symposium's working day will be Monday from 10 to 4 p.m. and it will be totally city center in Berlin in the Congress Center BCC. And all this information is already available on EFA's website. And our German friends have kindly also offered a participation option if you are joining symposium on Monday. You can also have a special prize to go to German fundraising conference and take part of the program on Tuesday and Wednesday. And based on all kind of discussion around reviewing advanced framework and then in EFA board, thanks to Edward and Kerry and Kietre, who is also online here, who is now joining the certification committee, they have give so much input how we designed the program. And the program is definitely designed to you who are already here listening to new updated advanced framework launching this one. But then EFA members and those who already have a standard or advanced certification program, but also the wider audience. This reflects and is a very important matter in the future for the charities, for the service suppliers, and they are the ones who are actually shaping the professional standards in Europe or even international level. And definitely we will go on with this discussion. This will be a dialogue event, not only giving the presentations and session, but we continue the conversation what have already started. And the questions we would like to explore, and there might be many other questions as well, but it's really that what kind of skills will define the next generation of fundraising leaders in the future? And how does the professional education actually translate into measurable income growth in the charities? And from the certified to effective, what really drives the fundraising performance? And like I said, we will also explore how the people and adults especially are learning in the future. So we will look at technology and data and all the fundraising content as well, but really focused on the learning methods and what is the current methods which are used by the educational providers. And here is a list of our speakers, and they are really experts from different fields, and I'm quite sure that they will lead and inspire all the symposium audience to the active workshops and continue kind of design thinking way what will be the future fundraising education. Thank you.
Thank you, Pia, and we invite you all to Berlin. Again, space for questions or comments. And yeah.
Can I just say thank you to everyone for all the hard work they've put in, and thank you to all our members who continue to develop their kind of training and certification. And I think this is a really good step change for us to make sure that we're doing even better stuff all across Europe. So thank you, and hopefully see some of you in Berlin.
I'll ask a question if I may. So all these heads of fundraising organizations and heads of training here, having seen the advanced framework and the way we've set out, what's your first, I mean, you may already have been seeing it as he was going along. I don't know what you had access to, but what's your impressions of it? Or pick on someone to answer, Edward.
I can start. I can just. I believe it's easy to understand, and it looks relevant, updated, and also it's easy to understand what you want to do and how you want to how you want to work with it further on. And also, I believe that the workshop or the meeting will be more useful this time. That's my first impression.
I continue maybe. For me, it's all new. I'm here on behalf of Ruth today from Austria, and I'm responsible for the diploma course in Austria since November. So for me, it's all step by step, and wow, the framework. I looked sometimes into it, but for me, it's not so clear as for you maybe. And it appears that there's a new level of the framework, and I guess that's good for the fundraising job as it is. And to have these levels seems to me really like a step into the good way. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other sharings, comments, questions?
Well, I can say that these documents, so now this time we are actually launching 2 documents, both presented by Ian, the framework, and the guide presented by Vicky. They will be on EFA's website, and we also have a mentor program. So if there are any questions, please contact Denise or directly some committee member, and we definitely can explain and introduce the framework and also the certification or application process more detailed and give support on that.
Great. Thank you. I only second the thank yous that have been already said. So a big, huge thank you to Jan, Vicky, Pia, Paul, Denise, everyone who contributed and made this happen. Huge thanks. And I do encourage all of you, if you are not certified yet, get certified. If your certification has expired, re-certify. And if you have standard program certified, do have a look on this advanced framework and work on your advanced certification at some point. So thank you very much. We will share all the documents with you, and they will be all freely available on the website. And yeah, have a good day. Bye-bye.